Imagine this. A crisis hits, markets panic, currencies fall, people lose jobs, governments scramble. And somewhere else, quietly, calmly, another country starts making money. Not by fixing the crisis, not by helping first, but by being positioned perfectly when everything breaks. This isn't a conspiracy, it's a design feature. Most people think crises destroy wealth. They do, just not evenly. In the global economy, crises don't erase money, they move it. And today, we're going to unpack the simple trick that lets powerful economies turn global chaos into profit, again and again, without firing a single shot. This matters right now because the world is entering an era of permanent instability. Debt is higher than ever, growth is weaker, trust is thinner. Crises are no longer rare events, they're scheduled guests. So let's talk about how the game actually works. First, we need to clear up a myth. Crises are not accidents. They're not random storms that hit everyone equally. They're pressure tests. When stress enters the system, it exposes who has leverage, who has safety, and who has no choice. And choice is everything. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The most powerful economies don't fear crises, they prepare for them. The trick starts with something boring but deadly effective. Control over money that everyone else needs. Not goods, not oil, not factories, money. Specifically, the money used when fear shows up. In normal times, countries trade using many currencies, but when panic hits, all that diversity collapses. Everyone runs toward the same thing, the safest place, the currency that can't disappear overnight. This is where the trick begins. When a crisis hits, global investors don't ask who is growing fastest. They ask, where won't I lose everything? So capital floods into the strongest financial systems, not because they're morally better, because they're structurally trusted. That flood does two things at once. It weakens the countries losing money, and it strengthens the countries receiving it. The powerful economy didn't create value, it absorbed fear. Now zoom in. A weaker country during a crisis faces a brutal choice. Its currency falls, imports become expensive, debt denominated in foreign currency explodes. Why? Because much of the world borrows in someone else's money. That's the trap. When times are good, borrowing in a global currency feels smart. Low interest, easy access, everyone does it. When times are bad, that same debt becomes a noose. Suddenly, your economy shrinks, but your debt doesn't. Your tax revenue falls, but your payments don't. Your people get poorer, but creditors still want to be paid. And who are those creditors? Banks, funds, institutions, mostly located in powerful economies. Now comes the part no one likes to say out loud. Crises force selling. Countries sell assets, companies sell ownership, governments privatize infrastructure, not because they want to, because they have to. Airports, utilities, natural resources, entire industries. And who is liquid enough to buy during a crisis? The economies whose currencies just got stronger, the ones receiving capital instead of losing it. This is how wealth transfers upward during chaos, not through invasion, through balance sheets. Here's the irony. The same powerful economies often help cause the conditions that lead to crisis, without directly causing the crisis itself. They raise interest rates to fight inflation at home. Capital leaves weaker economies instantly. Currencies crash abroad. Debt stress explodes elsewhere. Then headlines appear: emerging market crisis, sovereign debt fears, currency collapse. But from the perspective of the powerful economy, nothing broke. In fact, something worked. Higher rates attract even more global money. Their currency strengthens further. Imports get cheaper. Inflation cools. The pain is exported. This is the trick in its simplest form. Design a system where safety lives with you and risk lives everywhere else. Now let's talk about the quiet mechanism that locks this in: institutions. Global finance is built around rules written during previous crises. Rules about reserves, rules about liquidity, rules about acceptable collateral. And guess whose assets are considered safest under those rules? government bonds from powerful economies. So when stress hits, banks everywhere must hold more of those bonds. Pension funds increase exposure. Central banks stockpile them. Demand rises exactly when fear peaks. That means borrowing costs for powerful economies often fall during global crises. Read that again. When the world burns, they get cheaper financing. This allows them to spend more, stimulate more, stabilize faster. Meanwhile, weaker economies face rising borrowing costs precisely when they need relief. Same crisis, opposite outcomes. This isn't because of intelligence or discipline alone. It's because the system rewards those already at the center. Now let's address the word trick. It's not a single move, it's a position. Powerful economies sit at the center of payment systems, lending markets, legal frameworks, and trust networks. That position lets them turn volatility into opportunity. When prices crash, they buy. When currencies fall, they invest. When others must sell, they negotiate. Even aid and bailouts often come with conditions: austerity, policy changes, market access. Crisis becomes leverage. And here's the most uncomfortable part. This system persists because it works, just not for everyone. Global stability is maintained by letting certain places absorb instability. The pressure isn't eliminated, it's redirected. Now zoom out. Why does this keep happening? Because the world runs on debt, and debt creates hierarchy. Those who issue the safest debt gain flexibility. Those who borrow in someone else's money lose it. The powerful economy doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be the least bad option when fear arrives. That's enough. Now contrast hype versus reality. The hype says globalization lifted all boats. The reality says it connected them with unequal life jackets. The hype says markets are neutral. The reality says rules decide winners during stress. The hype says crises are failures. The reality says they're sorting mechanisms. Every crisis quietly answers the same question: who gets rescued and who gets acquired? And here's where things get tense. The system is getting tighter. Debt levels are higher. Interest rates are more volatile. Political trust is weaker, which means future crises won't just be financial, they'll be social. When people realize that pain is structural, not accidental, tolerance fades. That's the real risk. Not that powerful economies profit from crisis, but that too many people realize why. So let's end with a question worth sitting with. If crises are no longer rare, if they're baked into how the system resets itself, and if profit flows upward when fear spreads, then what happens when the world stops accepting that trade-off? Because the trick only works as long as everyone keeps playing the same game.